It's been interesting watching people of late. We just went to Denver this last week and got an opportunity to sit down and watch a lot of people in order to do that channeler event that we did. Very successfully, a lot of fun. But there and sitting in the airport and watching people respond and kind of having conversations with people in general, one of the things I'm watching is that the nature of the shifting in the status quo. I'm watching people be reactionary on one hand and very quick to judgment or very quick to response on the other. And I'm watching people unsure of what they believe. So you have a legitimacy in terms of the whole references to fake news. Now, if you just kind of begin to look at that from a standpoint of, it could be fake news, it's just somebody's opinion. And because of things like internet and because of the avenue of access to people's opinion, it's hard to begin to distinguish. And then in fake news, you really have people who are all about fake news.
But it may not be fake, it's just, like you said, somebody's opinion, whether it's truth or not, it's a news story.
Yeah, and I think there are also now actually people out there purposely creating a fake news to be disruptive. Now, I'm not so much interested here in fake news as I'm interested in how people begin to hold on to a belief system and how they begin to have access to what do I really think. And so people are so used to their status quo where they don't have to have interruptions. They don't have to distinguish every day between what's true and what's not true. So I'm watching this in terms of people having a level of instability. Now, in that instability is really simply what was true a minute ago may not be true now, and what was false a minute ago. Classically, our definition of fourth dimension
Paradox.
In the paradox. But it's a place where, as I watch people, the sense of pausing to assess, is this something that I choose to believe, or is this something that is a truth, and therefore, because to a great extent in our growing up, we just simply believed mom, dad, teacher, minister, until we started to rebel against it or push against it or even ask questions about it. But it's almost as an aspect of there's a level of adolescence that's now in the general population. And then you have, we say this often, I say this often, the average person walking on the street is unconscious of being unconscious. And so consequently, they're not paying attention to things other than their status quo, where we're all beginning to experience ourselves, especially the person on the street, is becoming conscious of being unconscious. And what that means is all of a sudden, a lot of their judgments and responses, reactions, irritations are all now coming to the surface, and they're beginning to notice them. And that's making people also generally unconscious. So what I'm really interested in, and I'd love to have response from people here that are listening to this conversation, is have you noticed that people just simply make a decision, buy into it, and it becomes their new truth?
Without considering present time, does this still apply?
Yeah, and there's a whole level too where it's like we just finished sitting and watching the eclipse, and that was really fun, really interesting. But the amount of people that got all excited about the eclipse. Now, how important was the eclipse to that average person? And for example, we got on an airplane yesterday to fly back from Denver to Boise, and the flight attendant asked the question, how many of you are going to Boise to see the eclipse? 60% of the plane raised their hands.
I think there's a level of me too. I want to be part of the cool kids. I want to do what everybody's talking about.
Yeah.
And so the media hypes this, as an example. It hypes other things, the internet, social media. And people hear about it and they want to be cool. They want to go do this thing. They want to have a story with perhaps not really evaluating the bigger picture of it. Well, it's going to cost me $1,500. I have to get a hotel and a car, and then I'm going to be driving 6 hours for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But I've gone, and I can put that little badge on my shirt and say, I've done this, I'm cool.
Yeah. Now, there are a lot of people who genuinely wanted to do the eclipse, us included. But there are a lot of people, when we watch people, listen to people responding, it really was, well, I'm going to do that too. There was no thought behind it. So I'm not focusing on the eclipse. I'm watching these shifting times that we're in, and how people begin to create beliefs, how they begin to create opinions, how they begin to discern between what am I doing this for and why am I doing it versus it sounds like something interesting and I'm just going to go along.
I think the big word that you're pointing to right now is the word discern. And we're not raised as children to learn how to discern.
Right.
We're raised to follow, not to think necessarily, not to discern generally. And so now we're in this movement forward, this group agreement, and we're like lemmings. Many of us, we're just doing what we've always done, and we don't discern. And discern is something best done present time, every moment. Does this work for me, or does that work? Do I want tea or do I want coffee? As simple as that, or as big as, do I want to go see the eclipse or turn on that show?
Yeah. Now, this conversation is not a judgment about an us and a them.
No.
Or it's really, and I'm saying that to everybody, this is a place where that level of discern, you're walking around in a very fluid, changing environment. The world is changing. And without that sense of pause and discern, you're watching a flow of people into opinions and judgments that may or may not be in their best interest, may or may not be in your best interest. So, but the nature of the disruption in the status quo, and then there's an unconscious set of reactions to what is now beginning to become conscious. I don't know what to do with this. And so for the purpose of this conversation is, how do you discern? How do you choose? What are you choosing? And then why are you choosing? What are you choosing? There are so many tipping points that are in the world today that just one little sound triggers the avalanche that everybody's saying, well, that's not going to come down for a long time. One little sound triggers an avalanche. So you've got lots of these tipping points. You've got lots of potential for really wonderful things at the same time. You're trying to change the flow of a river when everybody's in agreement with the flow is really tough.
Yeah.
But right now, in this disruptive nature of where we are, this very changing nature, when the status quo begins to be disrupted, the ability to create is really spectacular. So, but I just watch people who are reactionary, who are engaging without thought, that are not necessarily grounded, not necessarily in present time, not necessarily focused, but it's like, oh, me too. Or I'm afraid of, so I'm going to withdraw because, when in fact, if they were able to just ask the question, what if, as we talked about before, or where does this really go? Is this really something that's going to bite me, rather than go, oh my God, and close the door? The change is very fluid, and it's going to become more so.
But most people don't have the tools to do that. They're unconscious of being unconscious, and they don't know there's another option out there. They just continue doing whatever our habit is, without really discerning or knowing that there's another option. It's like we say the rational mind doesn't know what it doesn't know. And so that's what we're teaching. That's what these level one tools are all about, is slowing it down so that we can stay in present time and really stay in our space and watch from a more neutral observation deck, so that we can discern, so we can choose, so we can be grounded, so we can recognize what's mine, what's truly in alignment with me versus me too and the rest of the world.
Yeah. Level 1, level 2, both pieces of work are really about, is this something that I wish to engage with, or is this something I'm just sticking my finger in the light socket?
Right.
And so
Out of habit.
Both, all the Mastering Alchemy work is, this is what it's focused to. This wasn't the point of the conversation, but beginning to be in that higher mind, observing, choosing, and then acting versus shoot, ready, aim, is something that is really valuable at this point.
Well, and more, as we're watching these people in the airport and elsewhere react or do something out of habit, that's increasing. That intensity is becoming more and more from where I'm watching. And so having some kind of tool that helps you stay grounded and helps you stay in the center of your head while you're moving through life more and more, I think, is going to be valuable to people.
So for people who don't know Mastering Alchemy, particularly watching this, let's just point you to a whole segment called Fundamental Tools that's free. 8, 9, 10 tools that allow for discernment, for observation, for being grounded, being in the center of your head, having a capacity to understand how to build a platform to choose from. All that's free. It gets very expanded in level 1 and level 2, where you begin to really find who are you in this process. But the question that we're really posing here is, pause and discern, pause and choose, pause and ask the question, is this really for me, or am I just kind of going along, or is there, I'm confused and I don't know where to go, so I'm just going to go in this direction. Pause and choose. Really big point. And when the tipping point comes, not if, but when a tipping point comes, that's going to affect you or in a way that is uncomfortable, there's time to pay attention now, but now really is a time that's required to choose to align yourself with your comfort, well-being. And
practice when it doesn't count, because very shortly it's going to count.
Very shortly it's going to count. It's going to count in very shortly.
Yeah.
It's just kind of one of those things that we're aware of. So
discern
and
pause,
choose. Yeah, good way to say it. So good conversation. Hope you enjoyed.